Weekend letdown. You spend the entire week surviving for the weekend. Every stressful class, every boring shift, every alarm clock feels easier because Friday is coming. In your head, the weekend becomes this magical reset button. You imagine yourself finally feeling alive again. Sleeping late, hanging out, watching movies, gaming all night, going out, relaxing. Then it finally arrives. You wake up Saturday afternoon, scroll on your phone for hours. Maybe you go somewhere, maybe you don't. Somehow the day disappears faster than expected. Then Sunday evening comes. The sky gets darker. People start talking about work and school again. That anxious feeling slowly returns to your chest. And instead of feeling refreshed, you feel strangely disappointed. Almost empty. That feeling is called weekend letdown. Humans are often happier anticipating happiness than actually experiencing it. Sometimes the excitement of waiting carries more emotional energy than the event itself. The weekend becomes less about what you do and more about what it symbolizes: freedom, rest, escape. And when it ends too quickly, reality crashes back in. Which is why Sunday nights feel weirdly emotional for millions of people around the world. Rosy retrospection. There are people who say things like, "Man, I miss high school," or 2019 was the best year ever. But if you actually transported them back there, they probably wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much as they imagine. Back then they were stressed, insecure, anxious about the future, arguing with people, struggling financially, or desperately waiting for life to get better. So why does the past suddenly feel beautiful? Because of something called rosy retrospection. It's the brain's tendency to soften painful memories over time while preserving the emotional glow around them. The embarrassing moments fade. The boredom fades, the stress fades, but the atmosphere remains. That's why old songs hurt, old photos feel warmer, childhood summers feel magical, even if they were ordinary at the time. People often don't miss the actual past. They miss who they were back then, their age, their innocence, their hopes, the fact that life still felt unfinished. Sometimes memory isn't accurate. Sometimes memory is emotional editing. Post-event emptiness. Imagine waiting months for something important: a birthday, a concert, a holiday, a football final, a wedding. Maybe even just a hangout you've been excited about for weeks. Your brain slowly builds around it. It gives you something to look forward to. Your days suddenly feel connected to a future moment. Then the event finally happens. For a few hours, life feels exciting, different, loud. Everybody's together, emotions are high, you're fully present. And then suddenly, it's over. Everyone leaves, decorations come down, the group chat goes silent. You wake up the next morning and feel this weird, emotional emptiness you can't explain. That's called post-event emptiness. Humans emotionally attach themselves to anticipation. Big moments become temporary purposes, and once they're gone, your brain suddenly loses the thing it was mentally moving toward. It's similar to finishing an amazing series and not knowing what to do afterward. The emotional momentum disappears, the noise stops, and for a brief moment, life feels unusually quiet. Music evoked autobiographical memory. Sometimes one random song can completely destroy your emotional stability. You could be in a taxi, a supermarket, the gym, scrolling TikTok, and suddenly a song starts playing that you haven't heard in years. Instantly, you're somewhere else. You remember the exact room you used to hear it in, the weather outside, the person you were texting back then, your age, your mindset. The feeling of that time period floods back all at once. That experience is called music-evoked autobiographical memory. Music is deeply connected to emotion in the brain, which means songs become emotional containers for specific periods of life. Certain songs don't just remind you of memories, they reactivate old versions of yourself. A song can bring back the loneliness of being 16, the excitement of your first relationship, the freedom of summer holidays, the pain of someone you lost. And the scary part is how immediate it feels. For a few seconds, the past doesn't feel like memory anymore. It feels alive again. That's why some songs become impossible to listen to casually. Existential loneliness. You can be surrounded by people and still suddenly feel deeply alone. Not socially alone, existentially alone. Maybe you're laughing with friends or lying beside someone you love when a strange realization hits you. Nobody will ever fully experience your inner world the way you do. Nobody truly knows every thought you've had, every fear you hide, every embarrassing memory, every imaginary scenario you replay at night, every version of yourself that existed privately inside your head. That feeling is called existential loneliness. It's the awareness that consciousness itself is solitary. No matter how loved you are, your mind is ultimately a place only you can fully enter. Sometimes this feeling appears late at night, sometimes during emotional moments, sometimes randomly while staring out a window. And strangely, one of the most human experiences is realizing that everyone else probably feels this too. Every person walking around carries an entire invisible universe nobody else can completely access. We are all deeply connected and permanently separate at the same time. Envy mixed with admiration. Sometimes you meet someone who inspires you and quietly hurts your feelings at the same time. Maybe they're talented, attractive, confident, funny without trying, disciplined, socially effortless. Everything about them seems naturally put together. And the confusing part is, you genuinely like them. You want them to succeed. You admire them. But underneath the admiration is another emotion hiding quietly. Envy. You start comparing yourself to them, wondering why being that good seems so easy for them and so difficult for you. That emotional combination is envy mixed with admiration. Most people think envy automatically means hatred, but that's not true. Sometimes envy happens precisely because you recognize something beautiful or impressive in another person. The pain comes from wishing you could become what they already are. Social media intensifies this feeling constantly. People scroll through successful, attractive, talented lives while simultaneously feeling inspired and inadequate. And because envy feels shameful, most people pretend they don't experience it. But almost everybody does. Memory grief. There's a type of grief people rarely talk about because, technically, nobody died. Maybe you revisit your old school after years away, or scroll through pictures of old friends you slowly stopped talking to, or hear an old joke that instantly reminds you of a version of life that no longer exists. Suddenly, you feel emotional, not because something tragic happened, but because you realize that chapter of your life is permanently gone. That feeling is called memory grief. Humans don't only grieve people, We grieve time periods, friend groups, childhood homes, old routines, old personalities, previous versions of ourselves. Sometimes the painful part isn't even wanting the past back. It's realizing you can never fully re-enter it. Even if you returned to the same places with the same people, the emotional atmosphere would never be identical again. Life quietly closes chapters without asking permission. And one of the strangest parts of growing older is understanding that some moments only become precious after they've already disappeared forever. Anemoia. Have you ever felt nostalgic for a time period you never actually lived through? Maybe old diners from the 1950s, grainy photos from the 1980s, early internet culture, ancient villages, vinyl records, old malls, retro bedrooms lit by dim yellow lamps. You look at these things and feel emotionally connected to them, even though they existed before you were born. That feeling is called anemoia. It's nostalgia without memory. Humans sometimes romanticize eras they never experienced because those periods seem emotionally different from modern life. Slower, more mysterious, more connected, more authentic. Of course, reality back then wasn't perfect either. Every generation had struggles. But the imagination filters out the ordinary parts and focuses on atmosphere. Anemoia often says more about dissatisfaction with the present than obsession with the past. People crave worlds that feel emotionally warmer than the one they currently live in. And maybe that's why old photographs can feel homesick, even when they were never our home.